Alrighty students, let's begin our next video lesson. Today we'll be looking at section 8.5, circumference and area of a circle. So first we're going to talk about what the circumference of a circle is, then we'll go on to what the area of a circle is. So the circumference is the distance around a circle. So you can kind of think of it like the perimeter of all the shapes we've done so far. So we found the perimeter of quadrilaterals and triangles already, and it's just when you add up all the sides. Circles don't have sides, so we don't find the perimeter, we find the circumference. And it's the distance around a circle, and you find it using this formula, circumference of a circle formula. Circumference is equal to pi, that's the pi symbol, times diameter. And if you don't remember, diameter is the distance between one edge of the circle to the other edge of a circle, and it goes through the center point of the circle. So that's the very center of the circle, and this is a line that goes through the center of the circle to the other side of the circle. Whatever the length of that is, that's your diameter, and so you multiply that times pi. And so in this section, we will get the opportunity sometimes to use calculators, sometimes we'll be using other things. So what we're going to do is we're going to work some examples. So let's say you're told to find the circumference. So you might say find the circumference. Find the circumference of these circles. So this first one has a diameter of 20. So that's the diameter of 20 right there. And we need to then, so we just write this down, we would say C is equal to pi times 20. And what we can do here is we're going to be using, instead of using pi, we're just going to substitute in the typical rounded form of pi, which is C is equal to 3.14. This is something that you need to learn in math, that pi is equal to 3.14. It's actually a lot more, has a lot of extra stuff with it because it keeps going on forever. It doesn't stop, and as far as we know, they've tried to count it out to see how far it goes, and it just seems to keep going. And we'll take a look at how it does that and why it does that a little bit later, but not right now. But in this section, we're just concerned with using the 3.14. We're rounding it to that point. And we're going to multiply it by 20. So this is where we need to get out our scratch work, and we would write down 3.14 times 20. And we would say, of course, multiply that all, you get 0, all there, 0, 0, okay. So now we go to the 2, and since we go 1 over, we'll put a 0 here. So we say 2 times 4 is 8, 2 times 1 is 2, 2 times 3 is 6. And we had a decimal here with 2 numbers past it, so our decimal has to go still right here, because we only had 2 numbers past the decimal. We have to have 2 numbers past the decimal here. So our answer is, and since this was 20 inches, our answer would come out to be 62.8, because we don't need that extra 0 inches. That is the circumference. Now remember, we're talking about circumference, not area right now, so it's just the distance around it. So this is still involving just basically length of something, just a circular length. So we just use inches, no squaring here. Okay, the next one, you might notice something different between here and here. Besides the numbers, what's different? Well, the line's at a slant, yeah, but there's something else. This is not the diameter, this is the radius. So what can I do? If I know the radius, how do I find the diameter? It might be helpful to go back to this section we had on circles and remember, what's the relationship between a diameter and a circle? How do they, diameter and circle and radius and circle, what are they and how do they relate to each other? Well, radius is just, it goes from the center to the edge. Remember, diameter goes from the edge through the center to the other edge. So what do you think is going to be the diameter? If the radius is 4, what would the diameter equal? Let's see if you can guess it before I write it down. C is equal to pi times, what was the diameter? It would be 8, because the radius is just half of it. So if I times this by 2, I would get the diameter. So we would use 8, okay? That's what we're getting 8 from. So go ahead and multiply these. So we would say C is equal to 3.14 times 8. So go ahead and write this down. 3.14, write down 8. So 8 times 4 is 32. 8 times 1 is 8, plus that it makes 11. 8 times 3 is 24, plus that makes 25. And we had 4 numbers past the decimal, so we end up with 25.12. So our actual final answer is 25.12 meters. And that's our final answer there. I'm going to box in that right there too. So those were our final answers for examples 1A and B. Now let's take a look at this next part. Let's use the area of a circle formula. And area is equal to pi times the radius squared. So here we have pi times the radius squared. And a way to help you know the difference between these two is that this is area, and here you have pi r2. This 2 is up in the air, so you need to think about that. So the one that has the number up in the air is the one we use for the area. It might help you remember the difference between the two. Maybe it doesn't, maybe it does. Who knows? All right, so remember, radius is just the distance from the edge of the circle to the center. Okay, so let's use this as our first example. Example 2A, we have a circle, and we have a radius of 6 inches. So here we're going to plug this in, and we're going to say I have A is equal to pi times 6 squared. So now I would have A is equal to 3.14 times, what's 6 squared? Well, that would be 36, okay? And if we multiply this all out, where we would just say 3.14 times 36, we would end up with, this is all going to equal 113.04. Okay? So this is all going to equal 113.04. Now again, we're talking about area this time, so please make sure that you do put down inches squared. That is our final answer, okay? Next, here we have the wonderful next one. Now this is the length of the diameter. Does my formula have a diameter in it? No, it has radius. So if the diameter is 20, what's the radius going to be? Let's see if you can guess before I write it down. What would the radius be if the diameter is 20 feet? It would be 10. Yes, indeed it would. So next we're going to say area is equal to 3.14 times 100. And you guys can do the scratch work on your own to check to make sure you know what you're doing, but I mean, I'm not teaching how to times decimals here. We should all know how to do this by now. But if you multiply these together, you would end up with 314 feet squared, because we're talking about area. So that's the final answer for this one, okay? So once again, this is as simple as plugging the numbers in and getting our answer. The only difference is on some of these, we're going to have, or on most of these, we're going to have decimals left over for our answers because of using 3.14. All right, write down any questions you might have and be prepared to ask them in class. See you then.